Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. And with me is a very special guest, Gabrielius Landsebergis, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania. Now, my guest needs no introduction, but just for the benefit of viewers tuning in from around the world, he is the chairperson of the Homeland Union Party since 2015. He was a member of the European Parliament between 2014 and 2016. He is a sitting lawmaker in Lithuania's parliament since 2016, and he also served as a diplomat at Lithuania's embassy in Belgium and Luxembourg. Mr. Minister, welcome. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure being here.
Let me start by asking you, Mr. Minister, about your visit to India. What has your itinerary been like and how did your talks go?
Well, it's a busy month. I can tell you that. A lot of conferences going on around the globe. So I stopped in Munich, where we had a chance to talk about all the conflicts that are happening across the globe and look for the way out of it. Then, a couple of days in Brussels, where we met European ministers, and straight here to New Delhi, where we'll continue discussing. I pretty much hope rather the same subject, but that doesn't mean that they're easy solvable. So I hope that we will, one way or another, come to the agreement or solution.
Why not? Mr. Minister, India opened its embassy in Vilnius last year. So my question to you is this: where do Lithuania-India ties go from here?
Only forward. It's indeed, I'm very happy that now we have this loop that Lithuania's embassy operates in New Delhi, and now India has an embassy in Vilnius. Truly, I mean, it tells the growing importance of ties for both partners in this. And I wouldn't just talk about the trade, which is natural in any relationship, but our relationship, honestly, goes way deeper than that. It's it's based on our culture. It's based even on our language and history, which spans, well, in rather unique case, actually millennia. So this is truly a very outstanding opportunity for us to deepen and then better explain to our communities why it is so important. What ties do we have and what can come out of it.
How do you view trade and investment ties with India in particular? Is there scope for cooperation or collaboration in fintech, in laser technology, in semiconductor and Internet of Things?
Absolutely. Well, Lithuania is an interesting country in this regard, that when many countries in the world had a chance to industrialize, build factories, we're actually under occupation by Soviet Union. This was an unfortunate 50 years, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, almost all of our industry disappeared. So we had to transition from what was many cases in agricultural, post-agricultural society into a high-tech society. So this transition, brought certain areas of our industry and the high-tech industry up to speed. So we're truly proud ourselves of laser, optics industry, IT, cybersecurity industry. So these are the things that we can offer to even such a big country like India. To specifically, how did we get from a very low starting point
to leapfrog?
Yes, exactly. So and these leapfrog provided also the industry that we can offer, but also the idea of how do you change. So the countries that are, performing their own transitions, which are different, in some cases can see examples in a very, small society of just 2.8 million, and it could be well observed and maybe it could be interesting. But India as well is a huge emerging, and growing, tremendously growing trade partner for many countries in Europe. And I honestly believe that, that the opportunities for our cooperation for decades to come are wonderful. And I really invite Indian businesses to take this opportunity to travel to Lithuania. I know it's quite a distance to cover, but then when you're in there, it would take a day just to travel the country and then establish new contacts.
Indeed. And talking about bilateral ties, Mr. Minister, an Indian company called Indorama is present in one of Lithuania's 7 free trade zones. I believe it is located in Klaipėda.
Yes.
Similarly, how do you look at the possibility of Lithuanian tech firm Teltonika setting shop in India and doing business here?
Well, it proves, both examples prove that our business have already found themselves in one case in Lithuania, most likely using, Lithuania's strategic position as a port country, as well as a gateway into Europe, which is probably one of the best ways to see Lithuania itself being a small market, but then, being a part of a single market, which is more than 400 million people in Europe. Teltonika is probably one of the companies in Lithuania where we are very proud of. Really, it is finding the ways with IT products, with connected products that they produce in Lithuania. That means that they have all the certification of EU and the NATO country. It can be really offer a good value for Indian partners. So I'm really happy that they found their way into Indian market, and I hope that it's, again, as I said, it's just the beginning.
Now, India wants to position itself as a hub for semiconductor manufacturing. Some Indian companies have tied up with companies in Taiwan, for instance. Is there scope for cooperation among businesses in India, Lithuania, and Taiwan insofar as semiconductors go?
Of course, I think that India places itself particularly well, especially in the times like these. Obviously you've heard the phrase that is probably one of the most used phrases in Europe for the whole 23. It was de-risking, right? So Europe finds itself in a difficult position. When we've depended on such a natural resources from Russia, and when Russia attacked Ukraine, we found ourselves in a very difficult position, in the need to rearrange the whole economies, finding new partners. So now, nobody wants to make the same mistake twice. And now when we depend on certain important industries from let's say China, there's a need to find new partners. And therefore, India's decision to position itself as a hub for semiconductors, I think it's very wise. And definitely the possibilities, and honestly, not just for Lithuania, to cooperate, but for other European countries I think are tremendous.
India and the Nordic countries host regular summits. Do you believe that the Baltics should become a part of it too?
Well, I'm glad that Nordics and Baltics are invited into Raa Dialogue this year as a group, and I'm glad that we will be representing the region, which has a lot of it has shared values. It has in many cases shared economy, shared security understanding, and geopolitical situation. So I think it makes the message even stronger, to understand us better. And therefore, I'm glad that we'll be sitting in one panel with my colleagues from the Nordics and Baltics. But then again, I mean, whenever we do invite representatives, and I had a number of chances to speak with my good friend, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Jai Shankar, to invite him to Lithuania. We always say, if you're here, you can travel just 3 countries very fast. It's also, because we're so close together, to get a sense a little bit of economic opportunities, and also, what I'm saying, the geopolitical sense. What worries us, why we talk the things we do, right? So it's better if you're there, you really see
a better understanding of the situation.
Exactly, because it's so close to, we were so close to Russia, we're so close to Ukraine. So it gives you an impression of, how people do feel.
Mr. Minister, Lithuania, I'm told, has undertaken immigration reform. Is it true that Lithuania has restricted the entry of certain categories of Indian nationals? Well, if so, why?
It was not restricted permanently. That means that we had such a big interest of Indian nationals entering in Lithuania, so that in most cases our system just are overwhelmed with overviewing the applicants and deciding whether we have the ability and possibility to allow people in. You have to imagine that.
So is there a timeline in mind, or is it like an open-ended?
It's at this point, so open-ended. We will figure it out quite soon, I'm sure.
And talking about immigration mobility, Mr. Minister, China is reported to have stopped issuing visas to Lithuanian nationals. China-Lithuania relations remain frozen after the Taiwan office controversy. Does Lithuania still call it the Taiwanese representative office? And do you have plans to further ramp up ties with Taiwan going forward?
Well, the office remains. The name remains. We insist that we did not violate One China policy that we have established in Lithuania. So there is no need for China to continue their policies. Unfortunately, they apart from the trade restrictions that certain restrictions are still in place, they decided to take a path of diplomatic coercion. The way the pressure applied, such a big country on a small, tiny Lithuania. To change our stance. But we don't think that it would be a good, and wise precedent to give in, on pressure. I think that we have to stand for the principles of sovereignty and the integrity of the country. I think it's incredibly important to show that. So at this point, yes, the visa restrictions are in place. Unfortunately, Lithuania is the only country in European Union that faces these sorts of restrictions. But I've always been optimistic. I mean, it takes time. It takes a lot of debate. It takes patience. But I'm confident that it will, one day or one way, it will be solved out.
Mr. Minister, I have to follow up, a question on this. Do you think it's time that the EU revisited its China and Taiwan policy? Do you believe that the so-called One China policy delegitimizes Taiwan's existence as a republic? And is it fair to Taiwan that you adhere to a One China policy while having good ties with the island?
Look, first of all, what I'm advocating is that we have to respect Taiwan's democracy, right? And this is what Taiwan is seeking. Also, respect. I've never been in a conversation, or my colleagues have never been in a conversation where we've been asked for diplomatic recognition. I don't think that it's anybody would do at this time, or there any political thinking about this. But respect is a different matter. You respect the people, you respect their conditions that they're living in, and it's a good trade partner, and we've seen that. It's a good trade partner for India. When it comes to semiconductors, the same for us, for Lithuania. So I think that there's a good possibility to continue this path of engagement. We're not crossing certain lines, but we have to really deepen this. And I think that more countries are becoming aware of this opportunity and realizing that this is a path forward.
Indeed. And what's the status of World Trade Organization dispute between the EU and China over Chinese economic coercion of Lithuania? Is Lithuania still under a Chinese embargo?
There are certain restrictions that are still in place. They have not yet been removed. They are challenged in the panel. The panel itself is run not by Lithuania but by European Commission, because it's a European competence as a package in trade, and it was suspended due to technical reasons, and it was the sole decision by European Commission. As a Lithuanian representative, I do hope that it will continue, and that Europe will continue to defend its member states in the coercion cases like this.
Mr. Minister, I want you to talk a bit, if you will, about the salient features of Lithuania's Indo-Pacific strategy. The document is titled "For a Secure, Resilient and Prosperous Future." And where does India fit into it? The document mentions India as a priority market for export and innovation. It also reads, and I'm quoting it here, "We look to bolster our cooperation with Taiwan in the technology industry, resilience building, and democracy promotion, among other areas." It goes on to say, "The development of economic relations with Taiwan is one of Lithuania's strategic priorities and a part of its economic diversification policy."
Well, first goal when we set out with the Indo-Pacific strategy was that to prove the point that even a small country like Lithuania can have a strategic outlook when it comes to such a wide and diverse region as Indo-Pacific. You would expect, countries like United States or United Kingdom, or European Union to have their own strategies, and they do have. But then again, we've proven the point that we do have an interest in the stability, because our point is, and it connects to the geopolitical situation in Europe, right? I think it's fair to say that whatever happens in Europe, when a country like Ukraine is attacked, it affects the countries in Indo-Pacific region. And therefore, it just is good to follow on that if the instability would happen in Indo-Pacific, it would affect us, right? So we have an interest in this, a geopolitical interest in supporting and promoting the values that we hold dear, that provide stability for us, or in other ways, in other cases, that actually lack of, right? Which Russia tends to prove time and again. So that's number one. The second thing is economy, which is also, we're tied together, right? When Russia started its war against Ukraine, so many supply chains were disrupted, right? Also in India and then elsewhere, and also in Lithuania. So we tend to think that we need to be prepared for the future of the world, with better ties with the region. And yes, indeed, India is a tremendously important partner for us, for our businesses. And, we talked about this in the past. We're taking first steps more actively and proactively, approaching the companies, trying to convince, people to come visit Lithuania, to meet and talk business.
Are you offering them incentives by any chance?
Well, incentive is, it's good-natured people who are very glad to meet their fellows from India. So that's number one. But also, trying to figure out how can we and our countries and our business can benefit from the knowledge that is here, from the innovation, from the, in some cases even defense industries, right? So that's the case with Taiwan that you mentioned. That's also the case with India and so many other countries. I myself, as a representative from Lithuanian government, I do travel India-Pacific quite extensively, trying to show again that is important. We do care. We are interested in the way that that the world is perceived from this region. Explain, dispel certain myths. Tell our story about our history, which in some cases is maybe not very known far and wide, and use the opportunity to tell it.
And talking about economy and connectivity, Mr. Minister, here in New Delhi last year at the G20 summit, India and Europe agreed on the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. Yes. How does Lithuania view that initiative?
I think it's a strategic one. Honestly, it is a strategic one. It's a strategic step for India and for the whole, all the connected regions that we will be connected in the future. Really, I'm really glad that this is happening. We've, as a small country in European North, we witnessed a very active approach by your neighbor, by China, which in many cases was economic at first, and then became geopolitical with very clear interests, political as well. And I had quite a number of discussions here in New Delhi and in European capitals whenever representatives from Indian government would visit. I said, there is a market. There is a market for Indian goods. There is a market for our connectivity, because we cannot depend so much on a single country that like we do now. And therefore, I think that there is a lot of opportunity. There will be a lot of attention, and I'm sure that it will be profitable for European and Indian communities, but also for everybody who is involved in this.
And talking a bit more about Europe, Mr. Minister, Hungary says Russia has no plans to attack NATO. Estonia says Russia is preparing for war with the West in the next 10 years and is also having plans to double its troops at the border. Who should one believe and why?
Well, as a neighbor of Estonia, look, I can tell you that the way we see, the way that people see if you would ask a regular Lithuanian in the street, we've seen Russia breaking and entering into its neighbor's apartment, pillaging, burning, kidnapping children, doing really horrible things. And one is left to ask and wonder, do you expect that it will leave another apartment safe and sound, or it will continue? So this is the thought where it's coming from, that Russia has shown the brutality, intention to sow brutality in its neighboring country, and therefore we're really worried that the war that Russia is waging, it could be not just about Ukraine. It could be about Russia's return as honestly as a colonial imperialistic power that it has been in the past.
Mr. Minister, how the situation at Lithuania's border with Russia?
Well, it is, I mean, we don't see any security issues right now. The only problem that we had a couple of years ago was what we call the instrumentalized migration, where our different neighbor, Mr. Lukashenko, he arranged a migration flows coming from Iraq and other countries to our border. And he did that on purpose to pressure the government into changing our stance and changing our position. So this is what we have been seeing, and now unfortunately our neighbors in the north, Estonia and Finland, are seeing a similar situation, which has been organized now by Mr. Putin.
Mr. Minister, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia have agreed to set up what is known as a Baltic defense zone on their borders with Russia and Belarus. Will this be outside of the ambit of NATO?
No. I mean, within NATO, we can have security arrangements that increase our security. And that goes in line with the agreement, because if you see the articles of NATO Charter, the Article 3 is that at first you have to do everything that you have to do before asking for others help. So we are doing exactly this. But then again, it's difficult to imagine that concepts like Maginot Line, reappearing in European continent after so many years of peace, because that is a current reality that we do face.
Russian police is reported to have put Lithuania's culture minister on a wanted list for allegedly destroying Soviet-era monuments. Does it mean that there is a complete rupture in Lithuania-Russia ties?
I mean, diplomatic ties are there, but they are in, I would say, a critical condition. Obviously, I mean, we consider it completely unacceptable that Russia would use its laws to target officials from other governments, such as Estonian Prime Minister or Lithuanian Minister, outside its jurisdiction. So it's it goes against our sovereignty, and so we demand, and we have demanded to the representatives of Russian administration that all the charges would be removed immediately.
Mr. Minister, I'm approaching the end of my time, so last few questions. Russia says Ukraine conflict can easily be resolved if the West stops arming Ukraine. Viktor Orban of Hungary proposes that Ukraine should become a buffer between Russia and the West. What do you think?
Well, these are the concepts of long gone eras, which were devoid of UN Charter, of notions of territorial integrity, of country sovereignty, ability to choose its own security arrangements. So I completely disagree with the quotes that you've mentioned, that it would solve anything. The only thing that it will solve is that when you believe that you will be attacked the last. When I use the example of apartment, you think that your apartment is so far away that the attacker would be tired by the time he gets to your door. But unfortunately, the attacker might be inclined to check all the doors. And therefore, we have to stand for the one that is currently attacked. And that is the only way to make sure that no other door is being broken.
And do you think sanctions work against Russia, or do you think EU should change tack?
I do think. I honestly do
Why?
think. Because the sanctions deprive Russia's budget of income that is used directly to the war effort. Because Russia, even this year, they increased, or 70%, they increased their defense spending, almost twice. So if the sanctions would not be in place, that means that they would have, even more money to do that. It's really, really horrible what they are doing. I mean, with throwing people, to achieve their imperialistic goals. I really, I really hope that Ukraine does win this for all our sake.
Right. On that, Mr. Minister Mayor, thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And with that, it's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.